So as Jay said, I'm Shane. I'm from an organization called IDA. It's a government organization, as you can probably guess, since I'm wearing a jacket, even at the weekends. We have a really cool group of speakers here who, even though they both coincidentally have set up their Irish hubs in probably the prettiest surfing towns in Ireland, they both have a very, very different approach to home working. So I'll let Vanessa and Paul maybe introduce themselves, talk about their organizations, and then if we can get a bit of quiet, we'll also get them to talk about their approach to remote and home working.
Hi everyone, I'm Vanessa Ferguson from LiveTiles. We are an intelligent user experience platform for the enterprise, and I run our people and experience arm of the business, which is our HR function. We are headquartered in New York City, but as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm actually from Australia. We're an Aussie-owned company, HQ in New York City, and then lots of different office locations spread around the world, as well as a lot of remote employees as well. So we're almost 200 employees, and we've been around for about 4 years now. So I'll get into a bit more about our culture and our remote teams in a moment, but I'll let Paul introduce himself first.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Paul Savage from a company called nearForm. We're a services company, so we help other people build modern web apps. So we work with people like Condé Nast to help them build Vogue and big brands like that internationally. We've been around 7 years. Our HQ is in Waterford, in a place called Tramore, which is a fantastic place if everybody wants to visit. And we have offices in Dublin, and we have offices in Romania, and a small office in Lyon in France. But we also have, we're based across 24 countries, and we have a lot of people who work remotely and work from home. So that's where we are.
Very good. And Vanessa, you mentioned you guys have a number of remote offices. Maybe give us a sense as to where they are and some of the selection metrics or criteria that you guys use to choose where you set up.
Yeah, great question. So we've got, interestingly, our 3 engineering teams. So our product arm of our business is spread across 3 locations in not necessarily obvious choices either. So we don't have any of our product teams sitting in HQ. We actually have them in the first sort of original hub of our product team sits at the bottom of Australia in Tasmania, in the capital of Tasmania, Hobart. So that's one. We've also got another team who sit on the west coast of the US, just outside of Seattle, in a place called Richland. And then probably, very importantly, we have our 3rd engineering team that sits in Sligo. And obviously very sort of different locations for us. The reason that we went with those locations was for, obviously a number of reasons, but we really like to be close to tech universities where we can pull talent from those regions. And we also look into a number of other factors like the community itself, cost of living, quality of living as well, and how we can sort of build a team in that location.
And Paul, same question, but a little bit different for you guys because you've got a lot of home workers as well. Do you have any different criteria that you use for choosing people that work from home, or do you kind of hire the same way?
We're, I suppose, lucky that we have a great reputation for doing good work, but that puts a certain expectation on our teams. So it makes it more difficult for us to hire people and train them up because the expectation is immediate when they join. So we tend to engage people that are very experienced. So we've kind of 10 years plus experience levels in a lot of the developers. And so it's a different profile. And we're also looking for looking at what people have done before. So if somebody has worked remote before, that makes it an awful lot easier. And it's to identify what way they like to work. So some people working from home works for them, right? Some people, they just get lonely and curl up in a ball. They need, some kind of social contact. So with those people, we might have them work in a co-working space near where they live. But it's just a question of using that process of getting to know them during the interview process so we can make sure that they don't trip over any of the tripwires of remote working.
Got it. And that kind of, I suppose, fear of isolation, it's always the biggest, I suppose, reservation that we find when we chat to companies about, the concept of remote working. Vanessa, maybe give us a sense as to kind of what you guys do in LiveTiles to, address that from either, a communications or an interaction perspective.
Yeah, so our people are our most important aspect of our business, and so and being a tech company, obviously, it doesn't matter a lot of the time where you actually work from, but it does matter whether you're connected and you're collaborating and communicating efficiently. So obviously, we use a lot of the tech tools available to us to collaborate. So we're often on Microsoft Teams or Yammer or Skype for Business, and the dev team obviously use their own tools as well for smart sharing of code, etc. But probably the differentiator for us when it comes to making sure our team doesn't feel isolated. We also, I've mentioned the 3 hubs where we have our product teams, but we do have remote workers who work from home as well. Basically is the importance of getting everyone together face to face. So as a software company that launched about 4 years ago, very early on, I remember our CEO, Carl, saying all the time when it came to customer meetings, get in front of your customers, get in front of them face to face. You're much more likely to win that business if they've met you, you've developed a rapport face to face. And so we used to invest quite heavily. It didn't matter whether you had to jump on a plane, a train, a bus, hire a car, whatever, get to your customer face to face. So now as we've grown, that still remains very important to us as a business, but we've been able to allocate a fair amount of our budget to internal face-to-face collaboration. So often it's quite common that you'll have someone travelling from Ireland to New York, or even from Hobart to London or to New York or to the west coast of the US. People moving around so that they can connect, whether it be running a team off-site, whether it just be a series of meetings, whether it be onboarding. So we do try to, particularly for our American and European employees, get them to our New York headquarters for a bit of a cultural immersion. And also we invest quite heavily in an annual get-together where we have our whole team come together face to face. So it was a lot easier when there was 20 employees, 30, 50 employees. Now that we're hitting that 200 number, it does become more expensive and difficult with where we're pulling people from in terms of where they live in the world. So earlier this year, we flew everyone to Hawaii, which was really tough to take, I'm sure you can imagine. And that was a huge cost to our business, but the impact that had on engagement and my role in the people and experience side of it was to measure that engagement, and I did so right after the Hawaii offsite, and it really does pay for itself, that getting people together to build those relationships, and that way next time you do find yourselves on a Teams conference call, you've already got that rapport that you had established. So we've absolutely committed to doing this every year from now on, getting everyone together, whether we're 500 employees, 1,000 employees and beyond, and we believe that over time it will pay for itself.
Got it. And I think it's a really interesting point, that the need to invest in the connectivity, because I suppose, again, as we chat to clients about this concept for working, some of them say, that would be a really good way to save money, in that I don't have to pay maybe for an office. Paul, what's your experience been in terms of, on balance, the kind of cost of a distributed workforce versus a very centralized workforce, but then some of the more kind of qualitative benefits that you found from operating that model?
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a misconception that's thrown around. There's figures depending. I think if you're based in Dublin, letting somebody work from home saves supposedly 17,000 a year. If you're somewhere like Sligo, it's kind of 11,500. But the reality is that to keep people connected and happy, and the word rapport was the best. Like, that's the most important thing. You have to get them together. You have to invest in it. So it's not really thinking about it as a cost saving is not the right way to think about it. Talent is everything for these companies. For my company, it's a services company. The people literally are the value. That's super important. The knowledge in their heads, their skills. So keeping them happy, keeping them productive, and keeping them connected to each other and working well, and obviously keeping them inside the company is critical. So that's what you spend on. And likewise, we'd spend, and we're lucky that there's loads of little projects going on for us all the time. So people get together about once every maybe 8, 12 weeks anyway in project teams. So that builds rapport among the teams. And then we have obviously the annual get together. But that's critical to invest in this. So don't think about it in terms of it's not about saving the cost of a desk. This is about being able to attract and retain the best people in the world. That's what it's all about.
Got it. And maybe just to go back to the kind of communications and connectivity piece again, how important is onboarding for this group of workers, given that they're not really going to be working in the kind of the main hive, so to speak? Vanessa, how have you guys found that?
Yeah, it's really important, and if I'm completely honest, we haven't always got it right. As a fast-growing SaaS company, we have a sort of a scrappy way about us, and we move very quickly, and often we just hope that people will jump on the train and come with us. And so I've learned that, hang on, we need to slow down when we actually recruit. And I'll take it back even just one step before the onboarding experience. We actually pay a lot of attention to the recruitment aspect first to make sure that we are bringing in the right talent at the right time and that they are a culture fit. So what we do to sort of aid that process is we make sure that at least 4 people within our global team have actually met and interviewed that individual before we bring them on. And if one of the 4 is not so sure, we get together, we have a chat about it, and sometimes it goes to a 5th person to assess, and often that person will be in senior management. So you might have a future candidate saying, oh, it was really cool, I was interviewed by the CEO, and I'm only going for an SDR position, and that's not a good sign if you went all the way to the CEO in those instances. But basically, we do make sure that sort of a range of people meet with that candidate as well. So we wouldn't just have, if it's a dev role, we wouldn't just have people in the product team interviewing that individual. We'd probably pull someone from customer success, maybe someone from marketing as well to interview that person, and sometimes often even someone who might be reporting to that individual. So that's sort of the first step with recruitment. We take that fairly seriously and slowly, not too slowly, but carefully. Then when it does come to the onboarding, it's absolutely important, particularly immersing new employees into our culture, making sure that they understand our values, how we go about things here, and making sure that they have a clear understanding of which tools are available for which purposes as well. Because often I think a lot of people join new companies and they're like, well, okay, so you've got Yammer, you've got Teams, you've got Skype for Business, you've got Zoom, GoToMeeting. How do I contact this person? And for and what if I need this? Where do I go? So we have all of that laid out, but probably the more important and rich experience during the onboarding process is connecting with the broader team. And as I mentioned, where possible, we do try and get individuals at least to a nearby office for a week or so to just sort of immerse them in that. And for a lot of people, that is New York City. And we've got a really great office vibe. Obviously, we're sort of clinging onto that startup feel, even though we're growing quite rapidly. I'd say we're no longer really a startup, but we do, fit the bill in terms of the office space and everything. And it is typically a good time. We've got a nice big bar in our office in New York. So we also think having drinks together is a great way to onboard someone.
Good stuff. And Paul, I imagine, as a 150-person organization with folks in over 20 countries, the onboarding process becomes quite complex or not necessarily straightforward.
Yeah, and it's sometimes we have the luxury of getting folks to HQ, and that's brilliant because you can do that immersion and really bring them on board and bring them down the Vic for a nice getting to know you session and things like that. But we have some people that we literally don't get a chance to meet. So when we typically onboard people, the way we do it, we use what I call my bacteria model, which is we just split the teams. And so there's four-person teams split, and 2 people go here, 2 people go here. Then when we bring the new people on, they're working with people who already know how we work in nearForm, how we connect, and they help them connect in. And then what we try and do then is we have a slightly different issue in terms of connectedness to nearForm, right? So we're a services company. So somebody might be working with Condé Nast, somebody else might be working with ADP, somebody might be working with DPD. We have a culture that they take the customer's problem, they make it their own problem. They almost feel part of the customer. So how do we make sure they also feel part of nearForm? So we use some of the tooling. So if you, nobody's mentioned Slack yet. I think everybody, who will use the Slack? Sorry, should we? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, we love Slack. The most popular Slack, we have a random channel, that's pretty good. We also have a show your desk is another one, right? Which is just literally in the morning, people just, sometimes it's like the foyer of a hotel, sometimes it's a beach, sometimes it's a really crappy hotel room, which is where I end up regularly. But it actually just promotes that connectedness and kind of as part of that onboarding is helping them plug them into the team in a different way.
Interestingly, we do something a little bit similar where we have Whose View's Better this week, and we'll have particularly our Hobart engineering team. They're very aggressive with this, always having a beach view, or someone's working from a boat even, which I don't know how they get signaled to do that, but others will be, and then we'll have someone from London or even Sligo chip in with their view that day, and it's a nice way to create a bit of banter and back and forth between these people who culturally are very different and geographically miles and miles away, but you can have that really nice rapport.
Very good. And Vanessa, one of the, I suppose, concerns, and some other clients mentioned to us about the concept of remote workers is they need to be a certain scale to have satellite offices, that they get their HQ to a certain size, and then they have all the infrastructure and supports that they will need to do stuff internationally. It sounds like you guys did global from day one.
Yeah, exactly, and I think now with how quickly technology has evolved and continues to evolve, that model is a bit outdated because, as I mentioned, it doesn't really matter where you are. The biggest challenge for us is the time zone play. So if I want to run a global company update, which I do monthly, it's okay. Well, what time zone are we going to have it really favouring? And unfortunately, we've tried to change it up every month. And one month you've got everyone in Europe in their jammies, and everyone in Australia just waking up. Other times we've flipped it anyway. So basically, over the sort of growth of the company, we started off. We had a couple of us in New York. A couple of us in Melbourne. We had our chief product officer sitting in Hobart, which is sort of why we built the team around him. And we realised very quickly it didn't matter where we were, as long as that we were willing to work outside of that traditional 9 to 5. So that's where, for our customers, it's great because we chase the sun and we've got that support in every time zone. But we just have to be willing to know that, it might be 8 p.m. and I'm on a call, but likewise, someone on the other side of the world will be getting up extra early to chat with me. So it's going that extra mile for your business, which I think you tend to do if you are an engaged employee. You feel valued and you get back what you put in.
Which I think goes against a lot of the basic concerns about home working, which is, how do I know that people are working? Like, I know, Paul, you've had an interesting experience with this, which we could probably describe as the exact opposite of that concern.
Oh, absolutely. Folks that work from home, they see that as a privilege and something that's fantastic, but they almost try to prove themselves. And one of the challenges is that you're not seeing them every day. So you don't see when they've got the big black bags under their eyes, or they've taken on too much, or they're not, they're blocked or whatever else. So a lot of what we put around in terms of measuring people's productivity is actually just to make sure that people don't burn out, because nearForm is a kind of environment, there's a lot going on, and people they're always taking their own initiative and starting things and doing things and getting excited, and then getting very tired, and you meet them a few weeks later and they look like they're in bits. So we've had to be very, very careful about measuring people and what they do carefully, just to make sure that people don't get overloaded when they're away and not present. The video, even with high-def video conferencing, it's not as good as
still use makeup.
Yeah.
And on the tools, do you guys use anything kind of unique, funky, or stuff that you've developed yourselves on the kind of measurements side?
No, the really cool stuff is really like crappy tools actually. So, but it's the way you use them. So we use Google Drive, right? And we use like spreadsheets on Google Drive. And one of the things that we did at one stage was, kind of on some of the projects, at the end of the week, just tell us how happy you are, 1 to 5. That's it. Okay, simple as that. And that builds up a picture. We got all, and that actually serves as a predictive kind of a metric that shows when something is going wrong on a project or with a team or with a person. It's a very, very interesting little thing, but there's no like magic tool around it. In terms of the kind of the more advanced tools, is all to enable collaborative working. So it's kind of, Slack has been mentioned, Zoom is fantastic. We do an awful lot of things remotely that are trying to replicate what happens person to person. So with Zoom, you can have a big group in a meeting room, and then you can kind of break them off into breakout sessions and do, video and people controlling when other people speak, and it's kind of works well. So
very good. I know we have a lot of kind of remote working management and workers here, so I'm going to leave some time for questions. But maybe one last question from me, more about the kind of zeitgeist around remote working. Like, I think for a long time, as an investment agency, as we attract in tech investors into Ireland, our assumption has been they all want to be downtown, urban area, high density urban area, because their expectation is that their employees want to be in that environment. Is that zeitgeist changing? Are you seeing, something happening over the past number of years, I suppose, given the locations that you've chosen for your main hubs? Sorry, Vanessa, please.
Yeah, I guess the trendy factor will always be there. If we were to locate ourselves in Silicon Valley, for example, that might sound sexy, and we might get a few more investor eyebrows looking at us. But you've got to factor in cost of living, quality of living, competition for talent as well. So we started out tiny company. And to be able to scale as rapidly as we have, we've needed to recruit top talent and draw them in and retain that talent. So in order to do that, we can't always compete with the lofty sort of salaries that a Google or a Salesforce or an AWS might be offering their tech staff. However, we really draw people in with our culture. So we have a very inclusive and lovely culture. And also just some flexibility around the way we work. We're actually a flexible certified employer, meaning, similar to what you were saying, measuring sort of outputs and things, not where you are all day, every day for your 8 or 9 hours. So that's really attractive, particularly for mothers who have kids and who might not have otherwise returned to the workforce after having kids. There's that flexibility to work from home or to work a couple of days a week, whatever it might be. And also with fathers as well who have kids and have commitments that are more important than work and want to make time for those. So for us, being able to draw in that talent, I think we really push the quality of life that working for a company like ours can provide. And with some of the locations where we've set up, I think that certainly rings true. I've just spent the last few days in Sligo, and I can tell you it's a beautiful part of the world, and people there are really enjoying the balance that they've been able to set up for themselves.
Yeah. And Paul, are things similar and equally beautiful at Waterford?
They are, yeah. But I think the big thing that I'm finding is the whole industry is changing a big thing, which is, away from this idea of, the Y Combinator ramen noodles, let's get them in a room, let's work them 17 hours a day, to acknowledgement that people have life, and work is just part of life. And so, some people actually do want to live in that environment, and some people want to live in the countryside, and some people want to work from home, and some people like co-working spaces. But it's actually enabling the flexibility is the real, the magic sauce, that kind of just enabling people to have their life. And that, for me, it's like, well, I did the schooling this morning. Brilliant. Like, I couldn't have done that if I had a 9-to-5 job back in Dublin in the days when it took 2 hours to get to work in the car. Mm-hmm. So that kind of thing is fantastic. Enabling that is wonderful, but also enabling, one of our guys, Brian, and he's, I suppose, late 20s, really enjoys kind of moving around from city to city, hopping around, and you can enable that life too. So he would be a classic demographic that the early companies would have tried to appeal to, but again,
So the secret sauce is flexibility.
Yeah, people are different to each other, amazingly.
Who would have thought? So folks, we have enough time for 2 questions. Unfortunately, the searchlights are on us, so we can't really see hands, but if you put your hand up, the roving mics will find you.
Hello.
And please don't be shy. Introduce yourself and let us know where you're from.
Hello, I'm Simon. I'm from Haiku, Slovenia. I have a question on you, if you can touch on the topic of accountability and self-determination of the remote teams, right? How much freedom they have to make the business decisions they need to make. And another topic is also equality of opportunity. Are the remote teams really visible enough in the HQ, right? Those 2 topics, if you could.
Do you want to take that first?
No, you go.
Yeah, so actually, the last time, a couple of years ago, I was at UXDX, there was this concept of radical agility and autonomous decision making, and that's the real key to everything. The decisions should be made by the best person to make the decision. So that's a key part of success. And most people here probably work in some kind of agile or Scrum kind of methodology, right? And the idea is that you empower developers to make those key decisions rather than some architect somewhere who supposedly knows better. So anyway. So that's getting that right and having the right level of accountability, structuring your teams and measuring what you want success to look like and holding people accountable against that. But it's more like people actually set the expectation themselves and then want to live up to it rather than we try and police it. It's all more about autonomy. So that was the first part of the question. The second part of the question was?
I can answer that one. So being away from HQ and whether people feel that they've got enough of a say. Yeah. Interestingly, and I know that every company is different, so I can't speak for all, but for us at LiveTiles, some of our most important business decisions are made on conference calls. While someone's driving, someone else has got their kids screaming in the background. Someone else might be in a physical office location, but it's very rarely that it's around a boardroom table at HQ. In fact, I'd argue that HQ is not even one of our busiest and sort of more populated office spaces. It's just probably the one we've put the most effort into the bar. So it's the one that I like being at the most.
Can I better be honest for a minute with that one. So, those mistakes that you kind of talk about making when you're doing a startup and you're getting things running. This is the big one that we've kind of made for a long time. It's a very difficult nut to challenge, where we didn't deliberately do it that way, but we just, with the way the teams kind of separated off, they were making decisions in their projects and they were well empowered to do that. But we did have to, over the last couple of years, we've had to work very hard to connect people again with HQ. And HQ isn't a place in our company really anymore. It's more about just kind of the way the projects work together and connecting to each other. But yeah, it's been a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
That's super. We've time for one espresso question. I think I saw a hand down the back through the searchlights.
So when you were making the decision to allow your workers to go remote, did you have any hang-ups on kind of, giving trust to people to be remote and working 9 to 5 or whatever else you're putting in? And at the start, did you track the productivity of, say, office workers against remote workers to validate that decision?
Okay.
We had no choice, right? So we were based in Waterford. There weren't enough developers, so we were remote. So the first few people that are in our company, one of them was in Romania. One of the founders is from Romania. Sorry, just to be clear, it's not just somebody who works in the company. So we were kind of remote from the start. We have, as part of our competitive process, we have to compete against people who are co-located. So we have done a lot of work around measuring productivity, and categorically we can hammer anybody based in an office environment in terms of productivity. We've proven that at this stage fairly well, and I can share that with people if they want.
So we've been probably too small and growing too fast to really map that and calculate productivity of our remote compared to office workers. I'm sure that will come later. However, for us, it was an organic growth thing where we wanted the top talent, the best person for the job, and they just happened to sit in Kansas, in the middle of America or something like that. So if anything, when you ask about hang-ups in having remote workers, I think some people get worried, is so-and-so taking the piss? Are they actually doing their work? We're moving so quickly and we've got so much, in terms of output that it's pretty clear to see who's contributing and who's not, particularly given we also work in pretty tight teams. And I think the biggest hang-ups we've had have actually been from the remote workers themselves feeling a little bit disconnected, like, I must have missed that. I didn't get that communication piece. And so what we have asked our remote workers is that they be a little bit more proactive, I guess, in seeking out information, which isn't always ideal. We don't want to feel that they're always asking questions and can someone tell me what's going on. We have the infrastructure there to push out comms continuously and effectively, but for those people to reach out and say, let's set up a one-on-one every couple of weeks and just touch base. Perhaps that person is connecting with someone not in their immediate team, that kind of thing. So it's a growing pains thing, and we will continue to refine it as we evolve.
And in that, there's a magic number. So 7 is a magic number. So whether you're doing software or whether you're doing tug of war, if you keep the team size below 7, you can see if somebody's not performing. And Cambridge has done a lot of research on that if people want to look it up. So it's like, yeah.
That's why my 7-a-side team always perform better than the 5-a-side team.
Depends on the 5, yeah.
Okay. I think we've got a lot of very valuable insights into the methodology and the benefits of remote working. So, folks, put your hands together for our contributors.